Don't test that stereo.
This is the Iron Sharpens Iron Show with your host, Latrice Cook.
Good afternoon, KAZI listeners. You are tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, high noon here with Latrice Cook. And I have to start this show out giving a shout out to the best staff ever at the Mel Center and the two women who are in this room who is my assistant and the other person, my governmental relations person. So excited to have them because it is their birthday. So happy birthday. Shout out to Serafina, who is an identical twin to Katrina. So Serafina and Katrina, happy birthday to you. And definitely to Emma, a UT student. And also just these girls are just everything. And today is their birthday. And guess what? They are a whole 22. They're so old. So shout out to them. Shout out to the other staff members who have celebrated birthdays and stuff this month. So just want to give a shout out to everybody who is an October baby, including my son who just had a birthday a couple weeks ago. So shout out to him and Miss Shirley, actually, who have the birthday on the same date. So shout out to all of you all who are October babies and have celebrated another what is it, around the sun or whatever it is, however it goes. And I am just excited as always to be here with you. So many things to say. Shout out to all of you all who are already texting and listening and all this kind of stuff. Nick Collins, thank you so much for you just asking what was going to be on the show today. I appreciate all of you all who continue to support the conversation that happens here right at KAZI 88.7 FM with the Iron Sharpens Iron Show. You know, we talk about people, places, and things and resources that are provided and that are available to those persons who have previously been incarcerated and their families, because it is our hope that through this conversation that you learn something that could either help you in your former plight or current plight in being able to stabilize your condition and things that may have affected you in your life. So that's what Iron Sharpens Iron is all about. And we're just happy to be here. This is, winding down. This is our last show of the month. And then, we're winding up into the holiday season, and of course that means that we're going to be winding down as an organization, taking a lot of time away from here and off the air. 512-836-2887 is the number if you'd like to join into the conversation. And while I was riding, I listened to KAZI in my car, and so I was able to hear Tracy, who was on right before, someone had called in and asked about housing, if they trying to get an apartment if they have been formerly incarcerated or have a felony background. So let me just say this. I don't know anywhere specifically in Austin that is totally user-friendly to anybody with a felonious background who will issue you a lease. There may be some housing that might be forgiving of a felony conviction that is 10 years or more. I don't know except one housing complex, and it's been probably 7 or 8 years ago, that was user-friendly to that, and that was off of the Riverside area. So if you are interested in housing and people are telling you, hey, there's housing available, we're not talking about transitional housing. We're not talking about alternative housing. We're not even talking about rooms. We're talking about apartments where people can actually hold a lease to. And if there's anybody that knows that, we're going to ask you to call in 512-836-2887. Put your voice on the mic in the place where it is. We want to hear from you. But we are happy to speak with you at our office anytime with regards to what you can do to try to obtain housing. But as far as rental property, as far as I know, there is nothing that we can point to that says if you have a felony conviction that you will be able to lease a place to live unless it is a private owner. So anybody can call into that. I think Chris Harris and I think I want to say, and he also he's dealing with the housing thing. He's with the Austin Justice Coalition, and JP. God, JP, I'm sorry. I was trying to say his other name. So JP and Chris Harris, if you all are listening, 512-836-2887, want to hear your voice and address this housing issue. I need to bring them on here so we can do that. We need to really talk about that. You tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron show, KAZI 88.7, and Latrice Cook is on the mic. And as always, I always have somebody sitting in the passenger seat, if I can say that, ready to give you all some information or talk about what it is, the work that they're doing in this space. And so the person that I have, especially this morning, is when I first met her, she was, I think, just had stopped writing for the Chronicle. But the thing that stands out most to me about that engaging meeting at the Capitol, has been probably about 10 years or more ago, was that she had on this white wool coat that she still has not given to me yet. And so I don't know, we're just going to have to make that, you're going to have to kind of, we're going to have to straighten that out at some point or another. Amy is currently the lead jail advocacy organizer for Mono Amigo in San Marcos and the founder of the Hays County Jail Advocates. She assists persons incarcerated in the Hays County Jail with their efforts to organize for better conditions and is currently campaigning to free Cyrus Gray and Devontae Amerson, two young men wrongfully accused of capital murder. She is also the communication director for the Texas Incarcerated Families Association, also known as TIFA, which advocates for better conditions for people in Texas prisons and helps families and other loved ones navigate Texas' complicated prison system. Amy was previously the communications coordinator for the Texas After Violence Project. She has previous experience as a writer and editor at the Austin Chronicle, as an organizer for Fight for 15 and the Austin Community Law Center, and as a political consultant for progressive campaigns. Amy is a graduate of the University of Oklahoma School of Law. She has long been involved in efforts to document the abuses of the criminal legal system and to advocate for transformation. Good afternoon, Amy Kamp.
Good afternoon, Latrice. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
She is so humble, and I know she's always so gracious when she's on with me, and I have so much to say about the work that I know that you're doing in Hays County. And so before, I don't know where you want to start. I don't know if you want to just enlighten us a little bit about how the work you have been doing over the years has spearheaded you into, has launched you into spearheading this whole campaign in Hays County, which we know you can really be targeted heavily for pursuing the legal system in Hays County. So talk about Amy Kamp.
Well, first of all, when you mentioned housing, I actually, when I was at the Chronicle, I had a lot of interest in writing about criminal legal issues. And I remember, writing about the lack of housing for people, with criminal records. It's terrible in Austin. I think that, I always had an interest in these issues, but working at the Austin Chronicle and getting to meet so many people who were directly affected by the criminal justice system was really an education. Mm-hmm. When I was at the Chronicle, that was when the Fair Chance Hiring Ordinance was happening, or Ban the Box, which was an effort to, prevent discrimination in hiring for people who have criminal records. And so I got to meet, so many amazing advocates and people who have been directly affected. And I think, as the years have passed, it's just, I think that if you know about, mass incarceration in the United States, if you're familiar with, our prison industrial complex, it touches, every aspect of our lives. I think at some point it feels like, and I feel like it's going to wind up touching every single family. Mm-hmm. I think every family can say that they have a family member who's been incarcerated. That may be like a slight exaggeration, but I don't think it's a huge one. And so, it's just like, what are we doing? So many like public funds and resources go to this that could be used for something else. And it just feels like a lot of things that are wrong with this country, that are wrong with this state, and unfortunately that are wrong with Hays County are caused by our obsession with mass incarceration.
So I am trying not to cut you off because I want to backtrack. This is going to be a great conversation. 512-836-2887 if you want to join in. But Amy, I got to go back to the very beginning. And you said something that I preach all the time. When you started in this, you started in housing. How long ago, researching and doing housing, how long ago was that?
So I wouldn't say that I started in housing.
But the interest.
But yes. Yeah. Housing has played a huge role in my life. It's why I'm in San Marcos, because my husband and I were really struggling with housing here in Austin. It's frustrating because it's like, again, we're not devoting public resources to housing people who aren't incarcerated. But then it's like, we're certainly housing them in these horrible conditions when they are incarcerated. And so many people who, are being arrested, are being jailed, they have housing insecurity. And that's part of what leads to their arrests. I had a writer when I was at the Chronicle who was a wonderful writer. I think she writes for the Los Angeles Times now, who wrote about, homelessness in Austin and how, having a criminal record leads to homelessness. We know, we have a terrible homeless crisis in Austin. We know that, people are being pushed out of Austin. And I think that, a lot of that is tied to people's criminal records.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying about that is that how long they have used this as a talking point, a political promotion thing that we're going to make things better for people who have a felonious background. And so the years of talking about it and not doing anything, it makes you know that the needle has moved just barely. And that's why I was talking about the years. I've been doing this work for 19 years. And this was a conversation that they were having 19 years ago. You cannot make me believe that you all can't remove off the application, do you have a felony in your background, and also provide opportunity for a person, once you do a criminal background check, to come to you, talk to you about what that is, and give them an opportunity to put their key in their own door or have a lease. We've been talking about this for at least 19 years. What's the problem?
I mean, to me, it's that we're not prioritizing housing for people who aren't wealthy. So it's like, if you're here in Austin and you're not wealthy, there's no guarantee that you can find housing.
Without a felony.
Exactly. And so landlords, I think that they feel very picky. I remember the last time my husband and I rented a house here in Austin. I asked the realtor, I was like, oh, I have this friend, and he does have a criminal record, but, do you guys think that you would have any places that he could look at? And she was like, oh, I suggest apartments, just like completely dismissive. And it's just like, this is somebody who, is making more money than me and my husband, is very, like, I guess, respectable. And it's just like, people see a criminal record as like this scarlet letter, this taint that you can never wash off. And, I think it's very foolish because it definitely could be you. And if you're not a homeowner, you're going to find yourself in a real desperate situation.
Amy Kamp in the studio with us this afternoon. I continue to struggle with morning because I was on the morning for so long. But God, 512-836-2887 if you want to join into the conversation as we roll to break. When we come back, Amy is going to talk about the issues that are surrounding her new movement towards freeing Cyrus Gray and Devontae Emerson. You're listening to KAZI 88.7 FM. Iron sharpens iron. Keep it locked to the left. We'll be right back to you. And we are back. 512-836-2887 in the studio this morning with Amy Kamp. Amy, I just want you, before we went to break, we were talking about housing, and I just kind of want you to move a little bit from that, because we could stay on that forever.
Oh, for sure.
I want you to talk about your work right now with the Cyrus Gray. Talk about what's happening in Hayes County a little bit, and then I want you to also talk about Mono Amiga, what you're doing there.
Okay, sure. So, like I said, I used to live in Austin, and then during the pandemic, when my husband and I had the ability to work from home, it's just like, why are we living here? It's so expensive. It's such a struggle. And so we decided to move to San Marcos. San Marcos is, where my stepkid goes to school. I have friends there. And so after a while of living there, one of my friends, the executive director of Mono Amiga, Eric Martinez, asked me if I would be interested in coming on and doing some contracting work with Mono Amiga, because they had been getting a lot of complaints about the Hayes County Jail, and they just did not have the capacity to address all of them. And so, I was very excited to do that, because I love Mono Amiga. I think they're an amazing organization that's been doing so much in Hayes County, both around the criminal legal system and immigration. And
shout out to Jordan Buckley too.
Yes, Jordan and Karen Munoz, who's the other co-founder. They're both amazing. But yeah, so I started talking to one of the main people who had been making these complaints, Sean Jackson. Sean is formerly incarcerated in the Hayes County Jail, and Sean was very concerned about somebody who's currently incarcerated in the jail, Cyrus Gray. Sean said that Cyrus had been wrongfully accused of capital murder, that his trial was coming up this year, and he was just very urgently concerned about Cyrus. And when somebody tells you that, like, oh, this guy, he's been accused of murder, but he didn't do it, it's hard to know how to take that. When you don't know anybody involved, you're just like, well, maybe, I don't know. So I started speaking with Cyrus directly. Cyrus and Sean were able to put me in touch with other people who knew Cyrus, like family, friends, other people who had been incarcerated with him. And I did come to believe that there was a likelihood that Cyrus was innocent. And I was also just, before you mentioned like that I was like spearheading this, and I wouldn't say that. It's fascinating to me that there is so much organizing inside the Hayes County Jail. I think because unfortunately we have like some really good people in there, and they have just been doing amazing work.
And they are bright.
Yes. Of advocating for themselves, advocating for each other. A lot of things that are very altruistic, like people advocate for issues that don't affect them personally. They look out for each other. I'm not saying this is everybody in the jail, but the people that I've been working with, it's just, I felt like we had an incredible opportunity in Hayes County when so much work had already been done inside the jail. And, we also had the ability to work with people who are formerly incarcerated who had been doing that work inside the jail. So I did come to believe that Cyrus was likely innocent based on the information that I could access, which was pretty limited because he hadn't gone to trial. And so, when he did go to trial, we decided to do a court watch, kind of in solidarity, and just see what happened. And that trial, it was a real eye-opener. Like you said, I've worked at Austin Community Law Center when I was a reporter. I sat in on trials. Like, I feel like I have, for somebody who's not a licensed attorney, like a pretty extensive amount of legal knowledge. And it's just like, you don't think of like San Marcos as like a small town necessarily, because, it's a college town. But Hayes County, I don't know. It's a mess.
Yeah.
I was just so taken aback by the lack of evidence presented at that trial, the missed opportunities to pursue other leads, evidence they claimed that was lost or destroyed. This is something where it's a really tragic story. A 20-year-old Texas State student was shot and killed while he was at his friend's apartment, Justin Gage. And this was in 2015. And his friend, the surviving victim, he described the assailants as like 3 young Black men wearing masks. And so, I mean, that's like a real vague description.
Yeah.
And I think we can all kind of guess what might happen when you have that type of vague description of, 3 young Black men.
With masks.
Exactly. And so, these are not people that the surviving victim can identify. And there were no fingerprints or no DNA. They were never able to recover the murder weapon or trace the murder weapon. There's really like not a lot of evidence. But the other thing I would say is that I just don't feel, based on the trial, that the police were necessarily taking this murder, treating it with the seriousness that it deserved when it happened. And I think that that's part of what led to them eventually deciding to arrest Cyrus and Devontae, who goes by DJ, in 2018. I think they reached a point where they're like, we got to do something about this case. Like Justin's parents, when Justin was first murdered, they did speak to the media. They had offered a reward. They were trying very hard to, get justice for their son. And, at the trial, it's just like the things that weren't documented at the crime scene. I don't think they took fingerprints.
Wow.
There's lots of opportunities to collect samples for DNA testing that they didn't take. They did test some things for DNA, but there were lots of other things that they could have collected. Just so many missed opportunities, in my opinion.
The trial lasted over 2 weeks, and the jury remained deadlocked even after 3 full days of deliberations, resulting in a mistrial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And, another thing that's like unfortunate and striking. Cyrus is actually, his family, they came here from Liberia. They came here, they had asylum. So they came here as refugees. And, they came here because they thought that they were, coming here for like a better, safer life. And they're in a courtroom because a lot of his family, attended the trial, where none of the jury is Black, none of the lawyers, the judge, the people in there who are Black are Cyrus, the defendant, some of the witnesses, the victims. It's really striking. Cyrus's grandma, she asked me about it. She's like, why are there
no Black people? We asked that same question in Canada not too long ago.
So, I think when we talk about a hung jury, we have to think about like who's on the jury. Mm-hmm. What biases do they have, Mm-hmm. And I think, unfortunately, some of the people on the jury may have shared the biases that I feel like the San Marcos Police Department, the other law enforcement agencies that were involved, the Hays County DA, where it's just like, they got to be guilty of something, know? I think that that's really the attitude, is that, it's whatever.
So I'm going to read a little excerpt from here in just a second, but I want to just interject this. I just recently talked to an attorney who realized that the person that they had in custody was not guilty of a robbery. This is in Austin. Was not guilty of the robbery, just happened to be there. They had the person that committed the robberies and stuff, and this guy happened to be high, sleep in the back of the car. But because they want him to take something, they at least want to put him on probation for a UUMV. He wasn't even driving. But they went and picked up a UUMV that they had forgiven years back and decided that because that was in that from his criminal history, that they desperately needed after putting this guy involved in all this, he had to take something because the district attorney's office was unwilling to say we erred. And even if he was in there and he's given us the information, we have everybody that is involved in this, we need to let him go. Not put another scar on his record. Let him go and let that be over with. But they want them to take something. And many times people that are in custody are so desperate to get out that they will take something just to get out, even if it's probation. Can I tell the listeners this morning or this afternoon, please, if you didn't do it, sit there until they let you go without a stain on your record, because it is almost it's almost impossible to get those things off of your record that are a felony level charge. It just is what it is. And I've had the opportunity to talk to Cyrus Gray's father, his mom, and his grandmother. These are good people. And for them to have to deal with something like this, believing that they came to America or the States for, a better life and all like this, and have to face something like this. This process cost an estimated $200,000 in taxpayer money, according to the court-appointed defense attorneys, presumably not including the expense of keeping a person in jail for years awaiting trial. The prosecution, under the direction of Criminal District Attorney Wes Mao, has committed to trying this case a second time, beginning on October 31st, 2020.
Wow. Wow. We did find this out yesterday, and so this is like my first public announcement of this. The trial has been delayed until February 21st of next year. While we continue to call on the Hays County DA, and there will be a new Hays County DA after the election because Mao's not pursuing re-election, we're calling on the DA to reopen the investigation because, based on what we saw at the trial, they just didn't have enough evidence to charge Cyrus and DJ. I think it's really just an abdication of, the oath that an attorney takes, for the prosecutor to even have brought this case before the grand jury, because we know that if a prosecutor wants a grand jury to indict, they're going to indict. But we're calling on the DA to just, they can drop the charges, and that doesn't mean that if they find something later that they can't bring new charges, but just reopen the investigation. Just find evidence, just pursue the other leads that they didn't pursue. Nobody is saying that, or I'm not saying, nobody who's advocating for Cyrus or DJ is saying that Justin doesn't deserve justice.
Oh, no.
That this isn't, one of the most heinous crimes that you can think of. I think every parent is terrified of that being their child. But let's do this right. Let's have a proper investigation. Let's figure out who committed this murder, and let's not steal more years from Cyrus, DJ, their families. DJ has a young son. While we figure this out, they need to be free. These are, like you said, Cyrus's family, they're good people. Cyrus is the type of person where, honestly, I feel like if I were accused of murder, I would not be able to find the number of people to vouch for me or as passionately as the number of people who are vouching for Cyrus. This is somebody who has touched so many lives. I have talked to so many people who knew Cyrus, people who knew him in high school, people, who met him in jail, people who, are corresponding with him. He's just a genuinely good person. Like you said, he's very intelligent. He's obviously highly motivated. Somehow he's managed to keep his spirits up after being, in the jail for almost 5 years. He's endured a lot of retaliation for his advocacy and organizing, and yet he continues to do it. He's been helping Mano Amiga with research for a jail conditions report that we're writing. Just recently, he sounded the alarm when they started doing these transfers from the Hays County Jail to a jail that's like 5 hours away. Again, like, I feel like a lot of us, but definitely myself, if we were charged with this crime, we would not necessarily have like a sterling of, a list of recommendations as Cyrus.
So, Hays County has just become this, it's the new Bastrop County, because these rural podunk communities are notorious for having contracts with other facilities. So it's a money move. When they move and they say jails are crowded and they move them to, Collin County or all these other places, it's a money move. People need to understand that imprisonment is like a major financer of many things that this state, in many states, benefit from. And the tremendous damage, irreparable damage that it does to people from being in these deplorable conditions, even while they're waiting. If you are doing what Cyrus is doing, shout out to Cyrus Gray's family and any of the people in Hays County who are on listening today, because, what we have to recognize is that they put themselves in harm's way, because they are in the care and custody of these people we're talking about. And even when jailers are the people that provide supervision for people are not with it to inflict more damage and trauma onto a person, they have jobs also to keep. And so, it's really bothersome to hear that this cycle continues with all the advocacy around this work. One of the things I always say about Melch that's different from a lot of people is that we are a resource provider. It needs to be more people providing resources to persons that have previously been incarcerated, and not workforce development, folks. I'm talking about spending the time to find out who a person was before they ever went to prison, what it is that we can help make them whole and recondition them to be acclimated back into the community successfully, and get them charged and ready to do some of this work. Give them the place at the table and pay them to be a place at the table and not just a speaker. Amy, how has this trial affected you?
It was so stressful, honestly, because it's so weird, because you're like, that this is a horrible, life-changing mistake, and you're just like, nobody's gonna, put the brakes on this. It was really surreal. Like, especially there was a point in the trial where, two men who had said that Cyrus confessed to them after the fact that he committed the murder, they both recanted on stand. It was two brothers, and, they talked about how they had been intimidated by a San Marcos police detective into making these confessions. And, the police don't have any duty to be honest with you when they're questioning you, regardless of whether you're a suspect or just a potential witness. And so, they had made it seem like they already had all this evidence against Cyrus, and he was going to jail forever no matter what, and they just needed to save themselves. And so they did wind up feeling, pressure to say something. It's just so eye-opening, to watch the interrogation and to feel like, I can understand why somebody would do that. I can understand why somebody would feel like, well, if he's going to prison forever, I do need to save myself. And I think it took a tremendous amount of bravery on the part of those brothers to come into that courtroom under oath, under the threat of perjury, and to, take responsibility for what they did. And I thought when the first brother, said that he had been lying and he explained it, I was like, okay, this is over, right? And just like, for it to just like keep going, like nothing had happened. I mean, it blew me away. And then when, the second brother again told the same story, and we were able to view the video confirming what he said, it's just, it feels like being in a nightmare where it's like the judge like could stop this. Like, how are people so desensitized to what they're doing? You know, that's the thing that I don't get. Like, I literally wonder, like, how do you sleep at night? Mm-hmm. You know, I know that that's like a dramatic thing to say, but it's just like to know that you are the architect of so much suffering that is so unnecessary. I don't understand it.
Do you feel, you know, I just feel your passion. And I think this happens especially to us after you have watched so much injustice, after you continue to see, even because, again, America, if they want to say people got woke, they want to say they got woke when this happened with George Floyd, you know, which I don't know who went to sleep, because things have been this way for a long time. And you would think that even after this situation that happened, that America got awakened again, that there would be more of a rush for the people that are sitting on the benches, that are the ones that are bringing these cases, that they would then revisit themselves and look at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and that they're still repeating the same cycle. How do you sleep at night? You know, the passion that happens to us after you see this happen, and it's still happening. You know, you have to be you have to stay fearless and just strong in fighting for these issues that are still so prevalent. You know, what you've been watching in this courtroom, and even after the court case is done for right now, you know, still trying to encourage this family, you know, something that you've taken on aside from even your work is making sure that you are helping this family through this process, which is devastating. What does this change for you in the work with all the organizations that you deal with? What changes about Amy's work that you do because of all that you've witnessed in this particular space with this particular trial and case?
I think, you know, before I started doing this, you know, I would talk to people who either had been incarcerated or occasionally people who are currently incarcerated. But I didn't spend a lot of time getting to know them. And I feel like people who are currently incarcerated, I feel like that was, you know, deliberate, because it is so painful emotionally. And you have to think about, like, you know, what can you do in a way that's actually like helpful and meaningful, and not just like some sort of, you know, vanity project. And I think that, you know, knowing what your limitations are really important. I think that, you know, like I was saying, the thing that really motivated me to get super involved in this was to see that, like, these people are already doing the work, and it felt like, you know, maybe not a once in a lifetime opportunity, but just an opportunity that I hadn't had before. And to be so close to it, and to, you know, just see what's happening day in and day out, to get so many reports from so many people of these injustices that are happening in Hays County. I think of it as like, you know, if you break like a piece of pottery and you put it back together, like, it's still a bowl, but it's not the exact same bowl, you know, and that's how I feel. I feel like I thought that I knew before this, but I didn't know in the same intimate detail, and I can never go back. And I don't mean that in, like, you know, a self-pitying way. You know, I know that, you know, you're a mother. Like, I think when we think about, you know, the world that we want for our children, like, I just think that, you know, part of the responsibility of, you know, having a child, like bringing life into this world, you know, whether it's, you know, your biological child or a child that you've adopted, or, you know, a stepchild, like, we cannot let them live in this world that we've created. You know, and I see that with, you know, Cyrus's parents and with his grandma. Like, they are doing everything they can to, you know, try to protect their child. And I think part of, you know, protecting everybody who's coming up, who's part of a future generation, is just saying this has to end. Like, we can't just keep putting, because you know, there are older people, but, you know, people's first contact with the criminal legal system usually happens when they're pretty young.
You know, the one thing that I think people don't realize is that when a person has a mistrial, he is eligible to post bond and come home in many instances. And that's one part of this that you haven't really talked about. So you want to touch on that just a little bit?
Yes. I mean, that's, you know, another example of just like this weird disconnect between the people who are being harmed by the system and the people who are enforcing the system. You know, we went to Cyrus's motion for bond reduction hearing. We went to DJ's motion for bond reduction hearing. And it's like before, you know, they didn't have bond. And Cyrus was granted a $250,000 bond. And people think, like, first of all, they think like, oh, that's only like $25,000, only $25,000 that you have to pay the bail bondsman. And that's not true. When it gets that high, they're not taking just 10%. But second of all, you know, that's not $25,000 that you give to the bail bondsman and then he gives it back to you if everything works out. No. That's $25,000 that you will never get back.
That's right.
And so, you know, again, it's not $25,000. I think it would be closer to $50,000 if they wanted to pay a bail bondsman. But if they had $50,000, you know, they would have like a private attorney. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And it's just like, you know, the judges evaluating these things. And it's just like, where are you getting this number from? Like, what made you decide that $250,000 was a good number?
Because again, that's to put more pressure and more anguish and more distress on a family. When your loved ones go to prison or go to jail, so do you. You know, and so how that is such a terrible thing. They spent all this money trying this case, and they couldn't even come together and say, you know, we find him guilty or innocent. It's a mistrial. So that tells you that there's doubt. There's doubt. There's not enough. And so why would you even put a bond up that high for somebody you've held for 5 years, who you've had the opportunity to even watch the behaviors to see if they were a flight risk, if they were any of these things? You know, why would they not even consider these things? Or is there something there that is making them believe he'd be a flight risk?
Well, first of all, you know, there was like the whole like, oh, well, you know, he's not a citizen. And it's like, God. You know, give me a break. Like, first of all. But second of all, you know, I mean, I've seen other bond hearings. It's just the judges, you know, they have this number in their head where it's like, this is a number that I give to everybody. And so this is the number, you know, that I'm going to give to him. But then the other thing I would say is that even though there are so many people who love Cyrus and who, you know, have talked about how Cyrus has positively influenced their lives, you know, Cyrus is not universally beloved inside the jail because, you know, I do think some people see like advocating for yourself, advocating for others as troublemaking. And he has faced retaliation. And, you know, DJ is currently facing retaliation. Wow. And so, you know, we have one view of them, but certainly, you know, some people inside the jail, the DA, the assistant DA who's prosecuting the case, that is not their view of them. And it just, I mean, you know, I think something that, you know, we really have to be upfront with that's very frustrating, because I don't think that the media often wants to touch this, is that this is just anti-Black racism. Like, it just is.
Just call it what it is.
And, you know, when you're when you're responding very differently to a black man advocating for himself, standing up for himself, standing up for other people in the jail. And, it's not always that he's standing up for other black people in the jail, but there are, a disproportionate amount of black men in that jail,
and Hispanic.
Yes. But when you see that as somehow sinister, when you know that you wouldn't treat it like that if it were a white man, that is just straight up anti-black racism. And I do think, yes, like for sure, we do have a lot of discrimination issues when it comes to, Latinos and especially like people who are immigrants. But, the targeting of black men in Hays County is just virulent. And I think it reaches like a different level. And another thing, that's so disturbing to me is that, the demographics, it's like there's not a huge proportion of black people who live in Hays County, but it's like, Cyrus was a Texas State student. Like parents are sending their children to Texas State. People are coming to visit San Marcos, and they're getting caught up in this. And, that's like also very concerning.
I just, this is such a good conversation in the studio with Amy Kamp on the Iron Sharpens Iron show, and talking about Cyrus Gray and the Hays County legal system that is about as broken as Travis County, probably, but they may be a lot worse.
I would take Travis County over Hays County.
We have a caller. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the Iron Sharpens Iron show. Uh-oh, can't hear you, caller. There you go. Did we lose him? Okay. You said you'll take Travis County over.
Absolutely, any day.
Yeah, well, and one of the things in saying is that, we, as people are listening, if you have someone that is in custody, please, let's begin to continue to encourage them to advocate for themselves about their issues, because it's important. Is the caller back? Oh, okay, caller, you are on the Iron Sharpens Iron show. We can't hear. Is they there? I'm gonna try it again. 512-836-2887, caller. If you just call back again, somehow we got a disconnect there. We are just a firm believer that if you have an issue, a lot of times you are your best advocate, and we can't know on the outside what's going on the inside if you don't let us know. We think, okay, we got a caller on the line. Caller, you're on the Iron Sharpens Iron show.
No, I don't want to be on the show.
You don't want to be on the show?
No, I just got a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to be on the radio. You can take me off the radio.
You on the radio, so if you want to get off the radio, you better hang up right now, because you live on air. Thank you for calling. Are you trying to ask a question, or you got a statement to make, or? That's over with. Okay.
But, I would say, we are in social media.
Yes.
We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Hays County Jail Advocates. We have a link tree, Hays CJ Advocates, where you can find a lot of our links. We're having a sign making party at Wake the Dead Coffee House in San Marcos at 5 p.m. on Friday, because we'll be calling on the Commissioner's Court next Tuesday to cancel their contract with that private prison company that you mentioned in Haskell. And so if somebody has a question and they don't want to ask it on the air, please find us on social media and DM us. We are very accessible. We are here for, helping y'all figure out how to navigate this very complicated system.
Can you give a number if people would like to reach out to you specifically to get information about these events and stuff? Is there a number you want to give for either Mono Amigo or?
I wouldn't say that we have a number right now, although that's a great suggestion.
You can call our
do-
office for
yes.
512-473-2525. I would give our San Marcos phone number, but for whatever reason, it totally escapes me. But if you need information about how to contact Amy and any of these contacts so that you all can email, text, if you give us a call at 512-473-2525. Shout out to Samira Cook. Thank you for listening in too. Amy, talk one more time about what is happening this Friday.
So this Friday, we're having a sign making party. It's at 5 p.m. at Wake the Dead Coffee House, which is in San Marcos, because next Tuesday at the Hays County Commissioners Court meeting, bright and early, you have to get there at 8:50 if you want to make a public comment. We'll be calling on the Hays County Commissioners to cancel their contract with the Haskell County Jail. The Haskell County Jail is run by a notorious private prison industry, LaSalle, and it is unconscionable that we are, violently removing people from the Hays County Jail, already a bad situation, taking them 5 hours away, one way from their loved ones, from their attorneys, and paying these people over $17 million to house them.
Wow. It's a money pit. I mean, it just goes back to what I said. This is one of the most, it's egregious. It's just unbelievable how much money is involved in incarceration and how it's in many, I tell people this all the time. Black people don't have a financial stake we don't hold contracts for these prisons. We don't make money on prisons. Just like Travis County talking about building a women's jail and all this kind of stuff, Black people don't make money. We don't have the contracts. We don't even have the contracts for the erection of these buildings. Yet we are the largest percentage that they are making money on still. Even at it's unreal. This afternoon, you've been tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron show, and I have been in the studio with Amy Kamp, a phenomenal young lady. Amy, thank you so much for the work that you continue to do. And you had to be. Maybe this was a way of making you be more in touch and enlightened about the things that you have been writing about and seeing from afar and not so intimately. So thank you for the work and being prepared to do the work that you do. I know it's exhausting. I can tell you that from my own experience. I know that. But as we wind down on this show, we will be back on. We have another caller. Okay. No. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. As we are winding down, I just want to say to our listening audience, we greatly appreciate your listenership, your continuing to support this show, our organization, and the work. And I want to make, our San Marcos office phone number, 737-213-4070. If you want any information about the event coming up on Friday or how to contact Amy Kamp, Mono Amigo, please call our San Marcos office, 737-213-4070. And we're coming down to the end of this. We will see you next Wednesday, same time, noon to 1, same place. We're going to do our thing. You've been listening to Latrice Cook at the Iron Sharpens Iron show. And as you know, your success is important to us. And shout out to Amy Kamp.
Thank you so much.